Bene, siamo in collegamento con Agnete Morell, artista danese con base a Cambridge, dove sta completando attualmente un master in Digital Humanities all'Università del Cambridge, la cui pratica artistica si svolge, diciamo, sul pensiero critico sulle intelligenze artificiali, sulle relazioni tra l'umano e l'intelligenza artificiale, appunto, attraverso un lavoro che è ibrido e interdisciplinare, sia a livello delle filosofie che porta in campo che delle pratiche proprio e le tecnologie, perché lavora in una commissione appunto tra CGI, game design, filosofia, digital humanities. E dunque i suoi lavori sono stati esposti in numerosi paesi, tra cui l'Italia, il Cile, gli Stati Uniti, la Germania e l'Austria, e vedremo insieme alla fine di questo talk The Manosphere, l'ultimo lavoro di Agnete del 2025. Dall'altro fronte Marianna Liosi invece è curatrice, ricercatrice e postdoc con base a Berlino, e la sua ricerca ampia si fonda tra l'altro sulla commissione tra sfera digitale e dominio pubblico, sul concetto di spettatore espanso, sulle modalità artistiche del fare attivismo sia nell'ambito online che offline, chiaramente, e sul ruolo che ricoprono i prodotti audiovisivi e i social media come forme e come fonti anche dell'ambito digitale. In ambito curatoriale invece ha curato visioni di film, opere video, ha curato workshop e mostre in Europa, specialmente in Germania, ma anche in Nord Africa, in Tunisia, dove è cofondatrice tra l'altro del progetto artistico Seda Lab. In ambito accademico editoriale invece ha scritto e pubblicato numerosi saggi per volumi collettivi editi tra l'altro da case editrici rinomate, tra cui Bloomsbury e Routledge. E a questo punto io mi oscurerei e lascerei la parola a te, Marianna. Grazie.
Grazie, Vincenzo. I will switch in English, right? So thank you, Vincenzo, for the kind introduction. And yeah, I'm pleased of attending this, participating in this conversation with Agnete, and to discuss with her this fantastic video that will be screened soon later. And maybe we can start briefly with some maybe trajectories that you have followed, and maybe a brief introduction on the video, and then we can dig more into some other questions that you have touched with this work.
Absolutely. Also, thank you so much for inviting me, and I'm very honored to be speaking to you, Marianna. Yes, so the Manosphere video is part of quite a long 6-month residency I did earlier with Transmediale. And it's largely questioning what is happening with algorithmic platforms, and in particular, like radicalized online communities. So in this video, we follow a fictional 14-year-old boy. His name is Oscar from London, through a normal week. And the way that this work has been done is through almost like an investigative journalism, where it's blurring and part of like a bigger experiment where me as an artist go into like an activist space of questioning the platforms by, as we were talking about earlier, actually investigating the platform, like setting up a real experiment of a user account who is 14 years old and what is being presented on these platforms, and questioning like the larger ontology of the manosphere, of the philosophical range that's happening within these online communities. So one thing is just understanding like the content that's being presented, but also questioning what are the bigger philosophical impact of what does this say about gender balances, what are the actual fears, what is this movement about, when we take off like some of the tones or the way that they spread their message, and the way that they also make people part of this online community and strategies. So this is almost like an intervention, but also a visual understanding of mechanics for us to understand or take part of, I guess, a larger platform critique. Mm-hmm. Hopefully, I hope that this will pose questions and make us more critical towards both influences within the sphere and the philosophical impact, also especially around the youth.
Thank you very much for this overview. I was interested in the experiment you did when you opened the TikTok. I'm interested in these social networks, which I have been exploring now as a digital environment. I mean, I'm working on new terminologies or trying to understand through different terminologies what these spaces are. And now I'm interested in exploring these spaces as environment or ecologies. I'm trying to investigating these entities, these elements that coexist, humans and non-humans, and what are the non-humans in these spaces. So I'm interested in the environment that you explored and the experience of opening this account and what kind of contents you went through, because this apparently is a very emblematic aspect in the experience of TikTok.
Yes, absolutely. I will just share my screen and then show what happened when I... So here is a documentation of when I started to research for this piece. And actually, yeah, as you're saying, like, what are these environments? How do you experience what? And if it actually is true that young people are just randomly being presented to misogynistic or violent content. So this was my account. I never used it before. I wiped my cookies, my history on the browser. As you can see, like, it's set to being in the UK, someone who's born in 2011, and then this is one snippet from the first encounter, but I'm not following anyone. It's not being impacted. And then really clearly it knows that this person who's scrolling is in the UK. And then it's starting to show this like very violent content, and then goes into random videos of food, but then also just young people having fun. And then it goes into these like anti-government videos, or like people rebel against the UK government. There's a lot of these videos as well, also especially with female police officers later on, which I have all of this documented and everything in the video as well, to give it sort of like a journalistic point of view into these environments. Like, every content is based on what I was experienced through this environment. So young people in the fitness centers, what are the experiences, what are the language around it, the loneliness.
I found very, very interesting this series of images that you have been showing now, because it's clear that there is a pattern of contents that as an account without any other network, without followers, but this is what the platform is proposing you. So kids, violence, and food. There are no pets, but normally these are the contents that attract more followers and views. So this is what the platform is proposing, and thinking of the Manosphere and the script that you built is based on these misogynistic views and domination, basically. So this is all what we see, and maybe it would be interesting to hear more about the script and how you drafted it and how you
Yes,
wrote it.
absolutely. Yeah, so the script is largely like it's having this story arc between like a boy in his teenage years. Like, the overarching is him dealing with school life that's normal for someone in his age. That's the construct. But then he's going through these phases of meeting someone from the other gender. And this was widely inspired also by like the ecosystem of this online community, which is having like a very anti-feminist agenda in general. Like, it's largely inspired by Incel Forum, the Wake Up movement as well, where they believe that they need to take a pill, and this Matrix is also a big reference and is often like framed as the truth. So they need to reveal the truth through this red pill narrative, which is also something this person goes through. So I want to weave this into the story where he starts out being non-radicalized, and he starts scrolling, and he has this girl that he kind of likes, but she's not giving him the attention he wants, which might be a very real scenario in life. But then he's seeing this online content which sets it up in a different frame, where he starts to see it as him being a beta male, which also comes from the language that is in this sphere, where you can be an alpha or beta male, which is going down to biology and how the animal system is working. That we have the dominant types who gets all the animals, and then we have the betas in this hierarchy. And that's a philosophical frame that's being used, and that is very prominent when you start to read the online debates. So I wanted to discuss this point as well, and how he sees him. Then he starts to go to the gym, get this protein, but then there's also this framing of being lonely, which is another part of the movement as well. It's like how to tap out of society, which you're sort of winning because society is a construct as well. This person is obviously fictional, and it's just used as a vessel to understand different concepts and constructs, and that's happening in this really loose, broad ecosystem.
Yeah, this becomes even more interesting according to these conversations that you found out, and the level of irrational that you found out, that somehow is on the one side irrational, on the other side this language about game, which is connected to strategy with rationality. The chess game is one of the metaphors this 14-year-old boy use all the time as a reference, the queen, the king. And this is a very interesting path that maybe we can explore more in terms of display, this game of domination and oppression between male and female characters. On the other side, this makes me think again more this term environment, ecosystems, because all these emotional that goes back to the rational also go back to a dimension where several entities coexist, and maybe these more primordial feelings somehow also are part of these ecosystems. And especially whereas emotions as data create the development of a narrative, they create the contents themselves. According to the emotions of the users, the contents are proposed and rated as most relevant and circulated virally.
I think that's interesting, like how they have different tactics. Oh, like also as we talked about earlier, of engagement, like as you're seeing, like there's no cat videos, which normally scores great, but then they start to see this violence. Like I think that was also a really big point, and maybe that's also something we could talk about. Like, is this coming down to TikTok as itself and what they are presenting as the global platform who are pushing content, like, or do they have a say in this? Like, what is becoming popular? Like, if a lot of people are seeing violence videos, is it because people like it, or is it because the platform is pushing it?
Yeah, it's like an answer you never get. But if we think that the first contents you just saw when you opened the account were kids first and violence was the second, I think, right? And
yeah.
This is quite stunning. It's astonishing. So it means that probably because of these are the most popular, this is also what they propose you because you potentially would like it. And this feed the algorithm, because then it means the algorithm works correctly. If you contradict it, then the algorithm has to adjust according to an extra suggestion coming from your use. So it's a try. They try. And they try through what they have as the most popular content.
I think it's also part of like my research in this piece. I did dive into TikTok, and also, as you're saying, like, what are the dominant narratives?
And you also found out something quite interesting in terms of aesthetics, the representation of men and women from the AI, right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think this is in general when you are in the generative AI space. So I really wanted to create a generative AI piece and using, I guess, the like aesthetic ideology of, they talk a lot about masculine identity and feminine identity, and like what is the ideal man and ideal woman, which is from their point of view very deterministic. So I wanted to see what then was the generative AI's idea of these really potent words. So I started to dive in and I set up my own, it's called LoRa, when you download different models, and then it's been trained on a certain set of images, and it has like you give it an aesthetic bias. I will just again share. This is a product. This is called Civet AI, which is a really popular portal for you to set up your own custom AI frameworks for image generation or video generation. And then you download a model, and all of them, like what I noticed is that it's like you need to choose what aesthetic you like and the big data set that it's being trained on. So you can see there are differences, but all of them have like first of all, they're all women, which could also indicate that most of the group in generative AI are probably men. And then also like they have certain ideas of their aesthetics that you can see, like this is what the models should do. And there's definitely like, it's very manga. It's also like all of the women are very symmetrical, model, young.
Yeah, very manga, very also warriors, right? Yeah, definitely the manga aesthetics is the most prevalent.
Absolutely, yeah. But this is, so briefly, this is like a model that you download and it's trained. I think this is the same model but trained on slightly different things. So this is called cyber realistic. So this is probably more sci-fi.
And there is a substantial difference with male, right? The aesthetics is completely different.
So this is what I created in my first batch of different stereotypes of men that are representative. But I haven't done, it's really hard to find a model. At least I didn't find it for this research, but this is like half a year ago. So it might have changed now. This specific model, this is from the Tumblr area. So I really wanted something realistic, glitchy, early 2000s. But yeah, you can generate lots of different aesthetics, but then still it does have specific types for men. This was a protein powder, fitness, obsessed. So there's already, and I didn't prompt this specific, I didn't prompt this for the men to look in a certain way, but just by indicating these two times, it definitely has a preference for what these men should look like, which is also an interesting but different, different research from what the Manosphere came to be, but it was part of the process of diving into also generative AI.
Yeah, this is super interesting. And also, as I said before, I found very interesting this whole narrative about game and chess, specifically as a game. So again, going back to emotions and going back to this primordial sense of domination, and then you have in the script all this explanation about the role of the queen and the king on the chessboard, and this is a metaphor for domination. And on the one side, as the script reveals, having a queen which is able to dominate puts the male already in a position of privilege and of control, but it's the woman actually who is the queen who is dominating. So there is a very, very interesting and contradictory sense of control and domination that goes through this the metaphor of the chess game. And there is also a reference to that in the Manosphere itself.
You are absolutely right. This whole chess reference comes down to this like very big Manosphere influencer called Andrew Tate, and his whole logo is the chess piece. His dad, as far as I remember correctly, was a chess player, so he grew up with it, and it taught him how to do strategy. And he's building his whole persona about, like, a lot about battle between the genders. I actually wanted some of the quotes I ended up including in the Manosphere about chess, but also about how he sees women as something clearly a man needs because it's, as you're saying, it establishes dominance. Also something that 14-year-old Oscar wants. A lot of the rhetoric I found online is that the more women you have or the more popular you are amongst females, also because they do see gender like very biologically determined, which is also really important to understand the rhetoric in here. But the more women you have or the more popular you are, it's a sign that you're an alpha male, that you are dominant. So it has both this like alpha, beta, sigma slang, but then also like the war rhetoric and strategy and how you need to win against the opponents, which for sometimes in some debates, this was also like winning against feminists and rolling things back. Yeah, so one of the things I also briefly wanted to mention is like red pill. It's an expression that's taken from a scene in The Matrix where the main character Neo, he's given the choice between the red and the blue pill. And then if he takes the red pill, he realizes that everything is a conspiracy and then he can fight it. And then that's also something you'll see in the piece that he's giving Matrix references. And then if you transfer that to the Manosphere, like choosing the red pill is realizing that feminism has gone too far and they are the actual ones being oppressed by women. And that's a belief you will, if you start to read into it, you will see this reference coming up multiple times, being slurred through emojis.
Mhm.
And also through this like chessboard fighting reference. So there's I think that's also an interesting thing or an interesting point about platforms in general, but also how they can hide different meanings. Like red pill, you can just see it as an emoji, and then people who know, they will know what it means. Other people know what it means.
Mhm. So emoji somehow starts to play the role of the hashtag, because the hashtag is the element that opens several paths and domains. So maybe the emoji is working in the same way through knowledge. When you know what this symbol means, then it opens references and connects to other meanings.
No, absolutely. I think like in general, like having a shared language or something that only you understand, like this coding language, like it can be used for resistance, or I think in general going behind like a mainstream knowledge. Especially like if you watched Adolescents, they also make it clear that some people, they know, like, yeah, in that series, the police doesn't know what things means. They try to read through these messages online, and then the adults or the people who are not in the know of the slang or the emoji language, they think, oh, they're just friends. But then in reality, when you start to read through it and you can decode it, you understand that it's actually bullying. And I think that's also a really interesting thing, how like one thing is the platform, but another thing is also the language and the emojis, and how that also starts to create new meanings of communications that you almost you need to understand in order to actually see what's happening in these communities.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. It also builds a community. Once you understand the language, you understand the codes, because this is what I also had in mind when I mentioned hashtag, but it's also code. So when you have the language, you have the code, you are part of the community, then this is also feeding this sense of belonging. So the manosphere becomes even more stronger because you feel part of it. And this is just feeding itself as a mechanism of power.
Yeah, I think that's summing it up perfectly.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Agnete. It was very interesting. This conversation was really nourishing.
I absolutely love that. It's been so lovely talking.
Thank you, Vincenzo, for having us.
Thank you both. I think it touched many interesting points, extended through Agnete's work to a more general and critical reflection on the Manosphere that we perhaps still know very little in concrete terms about the Manosphere. So thank you very much. Bene, quindi grazie Marianna Liosi, grazie Agnete Morell, thank you Agnete. È stata una conversazione ricca di spunti, ricca di riflessioni importantissime sul tema della Manosphere, di cui, come dicevo, forse conosciamo ancora poco, e invito il pubblico a restare collegato in questa pagina per guardare insieme The Manosphere, il lavoro video essay di Agnete Morell, e vi ringrazio. I thank you both, Agnete and Marianna, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.